One of the things you rarely see on YouTube channels is a frank discussion of failure. I spent something like 2 hours talking to one of my clients about really having the notion of value as a coach. Now, this is somebody who has incredible value. I only work with people who have incredible value. And yet I have much more belief in that person than they have in themselves, because the value that they bring is not easy to measure externally. It's an internal change that has life-changing effects. And so my failure, frankly, was that I spent 2 hours really trying to use every trick in the book, every coaching ruse I could come up with to persuade that person of their value. And yet I couldn't do it. And today's video is really all about value, and it's all about how that value seeps into our sales process, either to our beneficial effect or to our distinct detriment. I was 9 years old when I first went with my father to the iconic Portobello Road market. The people from all over the world travelled there to buy antiques, maps and prints. And in those days, back in the 1970s, it was inhabited by colourful characters from around the world. And my father sold antiquarian maps and prints. And every lunchtime he would go and leave me to man the stand alone. And dealers would come to that stand from all over the world looking to buy these beautiful maps and prints. They were mounted on the wall, some of them from the 13, 14, 1500s, hand-coloured, perfectly framed, objects of incredible beauty. And my father gave me one simple rule. Howard, he said, whatever happens, don't give more than 10% discount to dealers, because that's the standard in the industry. So having that written into my tender heart, I had to deal with Italians, Americans, Spanish, Mexicans, Germans, people from literally every corner of the world. And what I noticed over time was that they all had their own particular sales approaches. I found it very common, for example, that the jolly Italians whom I love dearly would pick out a huge pile of maps and prints and have me add up the value of those. In those days, there were no calculators. I know it's hard to believe, isn't it, in this age of the digital. But I would have to add up all of those by hand. We're using a pen and a piece of paper. Let's say it came to £300. And then they would say, I'll give you 30. So that method, the shock method, is a known strategy in sales. But to me, as a tender 9-year-old, I had no idea how to respond. And so I just stuck to my 10% rule. And I kept sticking to it over and over and over again. Here's the interesting thing. The Italians would then go through a series of removing a few of those maps and prints, having me added up again. Let's say at this time it came to £250, and then they'd offer me 25. They were trying to wear me down, despite the fact that I was only 9 years young. They had no awareness of age at all. They were purely concerned with those maps and prints. But what I learned, and what sustained me before I had anything at all by way of sales techniques, was this. The maps were incredible value. They alone were what those dealers wanted. I knew they wanted. Everyone knew they wanted. And in that scenario, I had an absolute inner belief in the value of selling before I even knew really what selling means. Here's the thing I've been dealing with ever since those tender years of learning to sell completely naturally. How can I possibly instill that inbuilt sense of value, that undeniable, ineradicable rock foundation upon which I base my own sales skills, expertise, results, everything, into somebody like the person I was spending 2 hours with the other day? How can I make that communication so clear to them that in effect they inherit my value, my inbuilt, unquestionable skill set? And here's the conclusion I've reached. It can't be done. And that's why, in a way, this film today is about failure. Some of the values that we hold to be undeniable truths, we simply cannot communicate to others in a way that they can actually own. So that is something that really goes beyond my ability. And here's, in a way, the interesting thing is that there are many skills that can be taught, but I would argue that many of the things that we learn, there's my washing line, no washing, many of the things that we learn are really not able to be changed because we learn them so young in our lives. I dare say, although I haven't actually asked her, that the client I was speaking to for 2 hours the other day had some childhood experiences that made her question her own value. What can I do to change that situation? It's not possible. It's not in my skill set. However, there is a positive corollary to this story. Here's the thing about that 2-hour session. The value that that client holds is inestimable. She literally saves people's lives, and furthermore, she does it without the use of loads of drugs, pharmaceuticals, and all the stuff that we are so subject to in today's modern world of medicine. And I tried so many ways to try to reframe that for her. Now, she understood the points I was making intellectually. She accepted them from the point of view of empirical facts. But what she couldn't do, and what I couldn't coach, was to accept that value into her heart in a way that could never be questioned. And I could see it, that doubt, that hesitation, that sadness in her eyes, and I couldn't do anything to change that. There are so many people in the coaching industry who say that a problem like this should be addressed by looking at people's mindset, looking at their limiting beliefs. But that's, to me, just putting another label on the same old problem. The fact is that that client of mine never had that inner sense of confirmation that I received when I was a child. She never had the equivalent of those maps hanging on the wall that everyone agreed were of tremendous value and beauty. And without that, everything is in danger of simply being a plaster on top of a major wound. Now, you could say that the coaching industry is selling beautiful maps, right? How we get to our destination, it's all so clear and it's all so lovely. The problem is that for people like my client, they don't have the belief that they can actually take the journey. They don't have the means, the provisions, the knowledge to get from London to Paris For example, I was given the gift of my father's actual map, so what was on the wall, what I held in my hand, nobody could take away the value of that. No cunning Italian dealer's ruses could remove the value of what was in my hands. Now, what my client has, in fact, inside is a map. They just don't know yet, perhaps, how to navigate it. Now, that gap between our gifts and our confidence and our ability to sell can be huge and real. And if you feel that gap in your career, in your sales process, let's have a chat. Not so I can fix you, but so we can explore honestly where that gap lies and how it might, in fact, be bridged. Send me an email, put a comment below this video, and let's talk in real terms about real solutions to real challenges.